Millions of people spend billions of dollars trying to fight acne. But here's the strange part. Some humans who never used a single skincare product barely experience it at all. Your skincare routine has probably never been bigger, more expensive, or more talked about than it is right now. Our ancestors had none of it. No cleansers, no serums, no expensive treatments. So did modern life accidentally create the skin problems we spend our lives trying to fix? To find the answer, we have to go back 10,000 years, to the moment humans changed their diet forever. Start with what acne actually is, underneath the redness. Skin contains sebaceous glands, tiny factories that produce an oil called sebum. During puberty, rising hormone levels, especially androgens, push those glands into overdrive. Mix in dead skin cells and bacteria, and a pore can clog, swell, and become the breakout you're used to seeing in the mirror. For millions of teenagers, acne becomes the first time they look in the mirror and feel like something about them is wrong. But what if the problem isn't your skin? What if the world around you changed first? In Western countries, this is treated as an almost unavoidable part of growing up. Somewhere between 79 and 95% of adolescents deal with it. Dermatologists have long described it as basically universal, just a tax on being a teenager. Except it isn't universal, not even close. When researchers examined those 1,200 islanders on Kitavans, including 300 people between the ages of 15 and 25, the exact age range when acne should be at its worst, they didn't find a single case. Same for the Aché hunter-gatherers of Paraguay. These are people going through the same puberty, producing the same androgens, growing the same sebaceous glands as any teenager scrolling through skincare videos right now. So if the hormones are the same and the biology is the same, the difference has to be sitting somewhere else entirely. The answer wasn't hidden in their skin. It was hidden in something they ate every single day. For roughly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens ate what could be hunted, fished, or foraged. Meat, fish, wild greens, tubers, nuts, seasonal fruit. Then, starting around 10 to 12,000 years ago, something changed everywhere at once: agriculture. Humans began deliberately cultivating grains, and not long after, domesticating animals for their milk. It's one of the most celebrated turning points in our entire species story. It's one possible point where this problem may have quietly increased. Grains, especially the processed high-glycemic kind most of us eat today, spike blood sugar fast. Milk, something no adult human had ever regularly consumed before domesticated dairy animals existed, does something similar to a hormone called insulin, and to a related hormone called insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1. Both of those hormones amplify oil production in the exact glands responsible for acne. Populations who never adopted dairy or high-glycemic grains, like the Kitavans and the Aché, simply never triggered that chain reaction in the first place. Nobody chose this. No one in the early Neolithic sat down and decided to trade clear skin for bread and milk. It was an invisible side effect, baked into the single biggest dietary shift human beings have ever made, thousands of years before anyone had the tools to notice the connection. The farmers who planted the first crops weren't making a mistake. They were solving one of humanity's biggest challenges: survival. They couldn't have known that thousands of years later, their descendants would be searching for answers in a bathroom mirror. But before you assume this case is fully closed, there's a wrinkle researchers themselves are quick to point out, and it changes the picture more than you'd expect. Here's the twist almost nobody expects. 0 cases in Kitavans and Paraguay sounds like an open and shut case. Then, in 2016, researchers studied the Dogon people of Mali, another non-Westernized population, living largely outside industrial food systems. And this time, they didn't find 0. They found acne in 28% of Dogon adolescents. That number is still far lower than the 79 to 95% seen across Western countries. And the researchers noted that 90% of those cases were mild. But it isn't 0, and that matters. It means diet almost certainly isn't the entire story, and researchers studying this are careful not to claim it is. Genetics, sun exposure, differences in local hygiene practices, and factors nobody has isolated yet may all be playing some role alongside diet. So the honest version of this story isn't ancient humans never had acne. It's closer to this. Something about industrialized diets appears to load the dice heavily toward it, but the full mechanism is still being worked out, one population study at a time. Which raises an obvious question. If it's really about diet, shouldn't changing your diet today change the outcome? Even now, thousands of years after the original shift happened? Turns out, researchers have actually tested that. This is where the story stops being purely historical and becomes something you could try to check on your own face. In controlled trials, researchers have put modern participants with moderate to severe acne on low glycemic load diets, cutting the same category of fast-digesting carbohydrates that flooded into the human diet with agriculture. In multiple studies, including short, randomized trials, IGF-1 levels measurably dropped, and acne severity improved. Broader reviews pooling this research have consistently found that high glycemic diets and dairy consumption, especially milk, correlate with worse acne outcomes, likely acting through that same insulin and IGF-1 pathway identified in the population studies. It's not a guaranteed cure, and researchers are careful not to oversell it. Acne is stubbornly multi-causal. But watching modern acne partially retreat when a diet moves closer to what Kitavans or the Aché were already eating is about as close to a real-world experiment confirming an evolutionary theory as dermatology gets. So a mismatch that began roughly 10,000 years ago, invisible, unintended, unnoticed for millennia, still appears to be showing up on human faces today, and appears to be partially influenced by nudging the diet back toward what came before it. Which leaves one last question worth sitting with before this ends. Nobody in the early Neolithic set out to invent a skin condition. They were solving a much bigger problem: how to feed more people more reliably without depending entirely on the unpredictability of hunting and foraging. Agriculture solved that problem so completely that it reshaped almost everything about how humans live, where we settled, how we organized into cities, how our populations grew. Acne, if the current research holds up, may be one of the smaller, stranger price tags attached to that trade. Not a curse, not a design flaw, just an unplanned side effect of swapping a 300,000-year-old diet for a new one in a fraction of that time, faster than human biology had any real chance to catch up. The Kitavans and the Aché aren't living some purer, better version of human life. They simply never made that particular trade. The Dogon studies suggest it was never a clean, single-cause story to begin with. But somewhere underneath the redness in a mirror millions of people look into every morning, there's a decision made 10,000 years ago by people who were only ever trying to make sure their children didn't go hungry. They fixed one problem. They may have quietly created another, and almost nobody alive today knows that story is written on their own face. The acne on your face may not be a sign that your body failed. It may be a reminder that human civilization changed faster than human biology could keep up. If you enjoyed uncovering the real history hiding in the things we assume are just normal, subscribe to Ancient Actually. Every week, we separate myth from evidence and reveal the remarkable ways ancient choices still shape our lives today, in ways far stranger than most of us realize. Because history isn't just about what happened, it's about discovering why it happened and what it can still teach us today.